This is Calm AF, a podcast for humans who are hard on themselves. A podcast for the overthinkers, people pleasers, perfectionists, and overachievers. I'm Kristen Finch, and I'm going to teach you how to quiet that incessant negative chatter in your head. Because you know what a person with a calm mind can do? Anything they want. Grab your coffee, gorgeous soul, because today's the day you get Calm AF. Hello, gorgeous souls. Welcome back to Calm AF. So we are in part 5 of the nervous system series. Let's talk about what we covered so far. In part 1, I introduced the Calm AF scale. This is the tool that I teach my clients. We spend a lot of time on, and it's used to help them identify how regulated or dysregulated they feel in any given moment, right? Whether they're hypervigilant or hypovigilant, which side of the scale they're on, so that they can use that information to move towards that regulated Calm AF sweet spot. So that was part 1. Parts 2, 3, and 4, I broke down the 3 different patterns of dysregulation that I see in my clients the most. That hypervigilance, hypovigilance, and vacillators. Now, if you haven't listened to any of the episodes, make sure at some point you go back and listen. And the reason why I'm offering this series is to help you get a better understanding for yourself about yourself. And so you start learning how to break these patterns. But truly, listening to these episodes is not enough. You really need to be spending a dedicated amount of time really understanding and getting to know your own individualized pattern and having someone else help you see how it shows up. Because we all just walk around thinking our dysregulation is normal. We all think it's just normal. Doesn't everybody people please? Doesn't everybody think about their decisions for like 3 months before we make a decision? Isn't everyone out there like overachieving, trying to be the absolute best of the best of the best so that we can feel worthy? Isn't everyone energy managing? No. Or we think that it's normal that the only way I will ever get a reprieve from this exhaustion is if I just completely numb out or I completely shut down. And I guess technically they are normal, right? Like these living our lives this way is normal because the majority of the population does exist in this pretty constant state of dysregulation. But that doesn't mean it's the way we have to exist. Just because it's the way we've always done it doesn't mean it's the way we should be doing it. So today in part 5, we are going to be moving out of the dysregulation, talking about dysregulation, and moving into, in part 6, the regulation part of the nervous system. But today in part 5, we're going to do a quick science lesson, a quick, very basic nervous system lesson. Now, if you are thinking right now, you know what, I'm just going to kind of check out here. I'm going to go find something else to listen to. I'm going to come back when we are talking, when Kristen is talking about the good stuff, right? If you're thinking, I don't need to know, I already know what the nervous system is. Just give me the tools, give me the tricks, give me the how. If that is what you're thinking, I need you to stop and take 3 deep breaths right now. Because you are who this lesson is for. Okay, this episode, the nervous system basics, is absolutely essential learning for you. Because until you have a different understanding of your own nervous system, you will always be chasing the next tool that might help you calm down. Okay, and you will never actually be able to feel calm AF for good, for real, or for life. So let's go. A basic lesson about all nervous systems. This is how all nervous systems work. And when I say basic, what I mean is only what I think is important for you to understand in order to better understand Calm AF energy, to better understand what I mean when I'm talking about being regulated. Okay? So the nervous system. I think of the nervous system as like the director of our entire body. It would be like the conductor of an orchestra, right? It's the one who is like telling all of the different instruments when to come in, when to move out. So the nervous system is a network of nerves and cells that transmit signals between different parts of the body. the nervous system is basically responsible for everything, from breathing to digesting to thinking to feeling, everything. Okay? The nervous system itself is divided into two main parts, the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system is the brain and the spinal cord. And the brain, we know, right? I'm not going to get into all the details. I do that more in my nervous system free course. I should link that in the notes, in the show notes. I will. But the brain is divided into different parts, but the brain is responsible, in a nutshell, for interpreting and integrating sensory information. It's responsible for thinking. It's responsible for controlling bodily functions. And then the spinal cord, the other part of the central nervous system, that is kind of like the pathway. So the brain has the signals, and the pathway, it sends the nerve signals from the brain out to the peripheral nervous system, okay, out to the rest of the body. So the peripheral nervous system is how the rest of the body and the brain communicate through this peripheral nervous system. Again, basics here. So the peripheral nervous system is broken down into the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. The somatic nervous system is in charge of voluntary movement. So like when you decide to move your body, like you walk, that's the somatic nervous system. You have to decide, you have to choose. Now, you're not consciously thinking when you walk because it's such a habit, but when you first start walking, it's definitely like a learned thing that you do that you have to think about until it becomes a habit. Same thing with like brushing your teeth, raising your arm, waving, right? This is the somatic nervous system in action. The somatic nervous system also receives sensory input like touch or pressure or sound or pain, and it takes those signals to the central nervous system up to the brain to process. Okay, so the somatic brings in the sensory input, and then the central nervous system through the spinal cord takes it up to the brain, and the brain processes it. So the somatic nervous system is in charge of voluntary movements, and the autonomic nervous system is in charge of involuntary bodily functions. Things like your heart rate, digestion, your respiratory rate. Now, please hear this part. This is the part where it's important to listen. It operates automatically. Okay, the autonomic nervous system controls these things automatically without your conscious thought, without conscious effort. You are not in charge of making sure your heart keeps beating. You don't get to be like, I'm just going to stop it for a little while, or I'm going to start it again. You aren't in charge of digesting your food. It's just doing that automatically. Okay? So, autonomic nervous system is without your conscious effort. The autonomic nervous system is further broken down into two different branches, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. So let's talk about the sympathetic nervous system first. This is responsible for the body's fight, flight, freeze, fawn response. Okay, I have talked about this response in many other episodes, so I'm not going to go into it here. But in a nutshell, right, that something happens and it triggers your sympathetic nervous system to either fight or run away or freeze or hide or fawn. And fawning is like people-pleasing, overachieving, overthinking, energy managing. It's basically trying to control the emotional state or the mood of everything around you. Okay? And it's triggered the sympathetic nervous system anytime the body has perceived some sort of danger. Okay? And that danger can be real, right? Like you are walking down a shady alley and you hear someone starting to walk right behind you, right? A real threat will activate your sympathetic nervous system. It will increase your heart rate. It will dilate your pupils so that you can see clearer. It will redirect your blood flow away from your brain, right? Because it doesn't want you thinking about like what to do. It just wants you doing. It will stop you from being able to problem solve anything that it will get in the way of surviving, right? So the blood is pumped away from the brain and towards any vital organs, muscles necessary to fight or run, to basically survive. Okay. So that's amazing. You want the sympathetic nervous system working well to keep you safe from danger. The problem is that most of us are safe from real danger most of the time, but we are walking around with a sympathetic nervous system that is activated way more often than necessary because of perceived dangers. Not real actual dangers or emergencies, but like perceived dangers. And these perceived dangers are things like what other people think about us, or what happens if I try something new and I'm not good at it, or what if it doesn't work out and I fail, or someone just talked to me in a very stern tone of voice. And now there is a perceived danger, right? And yes, it's information, but a tone of voice or a side eye or what someone else thinks of us, it's not an emergency. And it is definitely not a good use of all of the hormones that surge through our bodies when the sympathetic nervous system is activated, right? That adrenaline that's constantly being sent through your body because your partner walked in a bad mood, right? Adrenal fatigue, right? Is it any wonder you keep feeling burnt out by 9 a.m. because you've already used up most of your adrenaline, right? The parasympathetic. Okay, so that is the sympathetic nervous system. The other side of this is the parasympathetic nervous system, the other part of the autonomic. The parasympathetic nervous system is responsible for promoting relaxation. It's often called rest and digest, and where the sympathetic is known as fight or flight. So the parasympathetic nervous system pumps out the other side of the neurotransmitters that send a signal to the body that the danger has passed, right? So the adrenaline stops, this other neurotransmitter starts, the heart rate slows down, the lungs start constricting, so because you don't need to breathe faster. Your food starts digesting again. Isn't that great? And your blood starts flowing back up into your brain, back up to the neocortex, where higher level thinking and problem solving happens, right? So the parasympathetic nervous system, in a nutshell, is Calm AF. All of my coaching, all of my programs, Calm AF Life, my podcasts, are teaching you to spend more time activating your parasympathetic state, getting out of the sympathetic nervous system and into parasympathetic. So that's your basic lesson. Now, here's why I think it's so important that you know this about nervous systems. The first thing is because when you start working towards spending more time in that regulated Calm AF energy, when you're like, I am done with this people pleasing, I'm done with this energy managing, I'm not doing it anymore, you're going to be so excited for your newfound inner peace. And you will for sure, absolutely find yourself in that sympathetic nervous system, dysregulated every day. And you're going to be mad about it. When this happens, you don't like to be wrong. You don't like to get things wrong. You're going to beat yourself up. You're going to tell yourself all the things, right? You're not strong enough. You're not disciplined enough. You haven't done enough work. You should have worked harder to learn how to activate your sympathetic nervous system. You're just too far gone. You're just too far past. There's nothing you can do. You're hopeless, right? And I hope in that moment, you will come back to this basic lesson. You might even want to listen to this episode a couple times, right? Because in this lesson, what you learned is that the idea that you should be able to control your autonomic nervous system, that you should be able to control when your sympathetic nervous system is activated, is like telling yourself you should be able to like consciously control your digestion. Like you should be able to flip a switch when it's time to turn it on and turn it off. It's autonomic, this thing. Now, we can influence our autonomic nervous systems through, the work that I do with my clients, emotional regulation work, mindset shifts, basically, spending more time in that parasympathetic Calm AF energy, okay? you learn to influence your autonomic nervous system so you aren't being triggered by things that aren't actually emergencies. But at the end of the day, it is simply part of that involuntary system happening without your conscious control. Right? We talk about this in Calm AF Life all the time when they're so mad at themselves for, I said I wasn't going to energy manage and I did. It's like the goal isn't to be never dysregulated. The goal is to spend less time being dysregulated, to be able to move into Calm AF energy quicker. And that's what the program is definitely doing. I just did a survey. This was so cool. Asking for feedback from the people who are in Calm AF Life. And the thing that almost every person shared was that they are feeling better now. And the things that they used to get really set off by, maybe sets them into a pattern of people pleasing or whatever, they didn't get so triggered so quickly anymore. And when they did get triggered, it didn't spiral them out for as long. Like they were able to catch it quicker. And that to me is like the success, because any control, any way of influencing your autonomic nervous system is a win. So that's the first reason why I think it's so important to understand these basics of how all nervous systems work. Autonomic nervous systems are all working this way. So you don't beat yourself up. You don't shame yourself for not doing it perfectly. In fact, the way I like to tell people, and I was like, listen, you're an overachiever. You have an overachieving sympathetic autonomic nervous system. Like, pat yourself on the back. You've done a great job. So that is the first reason. The second reason why I think it's so important for you to understand how all nervous systems work is that from this moment on, you can go out into the world and every single human that you interact with, every single human that you see, you will remember that they are also walking around with a very well-functioning, probably overachieving sympathetic nervous system. They have spent their lives training their sympathetic nervous system to respond to the dangers around them in a very highly functioning way, except like over-functioning, right? Because now they are also reacting to people's tone of voice. And they were also, their sympathetic nervous system is being triggered when someone, looks at them wrong or tells them, cuts them off in traffic, whatever. So the next time you see a person, any person, your partner, your kid, a stranger at the store, someone in traffic, anyone, you see a person who is clearly dysregulated, right? Maybe they're acting out, maybe they are, flustered, they're shutting down. You will remember this episode and you will remember that it's their autonomic nervous system. They are not actually in control of this. Can they work on influencing it? Absolutely. But in that moment, it's their autonomic nervous system. And all their blood is moving away from their brain and towards their legs so they can run, and towards their, other things that will keep them alive. So probably not the best time to have a rational conversation, to try and get into an argument with someone who is in a dysregulated, sympathetic nervous system state. Probably not the most reasonable thing for you to do. It's probably not going to be very helpful, right? Because anyone, you and anyone else who is dysregulated are not available. Or I should say more accurately, their brains are not available. The blood is moving away. They're not available for reasoning. When you tell them to calm down, they are not able to take that the way you want them to until their parasympathetic nervous system is activated. The most powerful person in any room, in any conversation, in any situation is the most regulated one. It's the one who is Calm AF. And that is what we will talk about next week in part 6. All right, I will see you then. I hope you have an amazing rest of your week. I love you so much. See you next time. Thanks for listening. And before you go, one more thing. So as you know, I am slightly obsessed with helping as many humans tap into their calm AFness as possible. So if this podcast has helped you, would you please leave a review, make sure you're subscribed, and share it with your friends. Also, make sure you head on over to kristenfinch.com to see how you can work with me. You can sign up for my emails and get any other goodies I have available. Until next week, I love you so much. I am so grateful that you're here. I'll see you next time.